All right. Is anybody else on here? Can anybody hear me?
Hey, Asa.
What's up, man?
Not much. How you doing?
Good, good. How you been?
Good. That's a cool background.
Thanks. I'm looking at Benjamin's here too. I don't know if you can see that.
Looks like outdoors. Is he on his deck?
I don't know. It looks cool though.
Huh.
All right, what's up, guys?
What's up, man?
There he is.
Yeah, the way that I'm running this, um, so that I can be on my phone where I actually have better video and audio. I got my other account, which is my main account, which this Google Hangout's actually on, and I'm on my secondary account to be on this Google Hangout, so that by the time that this is all done, it can be uploaded to my account, and I can be on. And it's very technical, but I got it going on. Been spending the last week getting very familiar with Google Hangouts.
Awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome, man. I don't think I could have the patience for that.
Yeah, it's Greek to me.
Yeah, well, I kind of did Lauren just get on? No, she just commented on the post. Okay. No, she was going to be running in, and then she asked me to fill in at the last second. And the way that these things go, I haven't been that adept at any webinars or online hangouts or even Skype, and so it was a steep learning curve. And so I was kind of embarrassed with the way that things went last week. I mean, it still happened. Imperfect action is better than no action. But when something like that happens, it kind of forces me to go and learn.
I think Lauren needs an invite.
Okay.
That's what she's saying.
All right. Let me go and do that.
We were going to have a couple other people join us too, weren't we?
Yeah, I think Andrea said she's gonna watch on Google Hangouts. I saw there was a couple people in there. Maybe I'm not too adept with the Google Hangout either. Yeah, she's commenting now.
Yeah, she is. I saw one other girl down in the comments, Tara Ann Darger. She said she would definitely be on this one.
Yeah, I don't know if she was planning on coming to the reading or just the discussion.
Yeah, good question. Do you know her?
Only from this other group that I'm in with her on Facebook.
Yeah, I met her at Live Big. She's pretty cool.
What is Live Big?
Gerald Rogers. Do you know that name?
No, I don't.
No, it's personal development stuff. He does a conference in the Salt Lake Valley called Live Big. He does it like 3 or 4 times a year. Anyway.
Did you get You get a lot out of it, or?
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Seriously, it's huge.
What does he talk about?
Well, let's just talk about getting out of your own way, identifying and replacing limiting beliefs and choosing to create something. He uses a lot of different methods, psychology, energy work. It's pretty rational, but it's just, you go to these conferences and you leave with such an amazing energy and like you can do anything.
It's awesome. It sounds really cool.
Yeah. Where do you live, Aisha?
I am living in Vermont right now, where I grew up. I'm actually staying at my mother's house, which is getting kind of old. I'm going to be taking off here pretty soon.
Yeah.
I'm at a place close by in Marlow. This outdoor expedition company for kids. They do like different kind of adventure sports like whitewater rafting, kayaking, canoeing,
Awesome.
swimming, rappelling, spelunking, wilderness skills, all kinds of stuff like that. But
Yeah, cool.
it did not work out for this year anyway.
Huh.
Yeah, it did sound really cool, man. I went up and volunteered there for a bit. Stayed there for like 5 days. It was pretty good. I worked really hard though. But
Things like that you usually work real hard and don't get paid a lot.
much, dude. Yeah, I was gonna be. I was applying for a farmhand position, and it's like $100 a week stipend plus your room and board. So
Holy cow.
you have to live pretty simply.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Somewhere I was living in Keene, New Hampshire. I had my own place, and I was working as a car salesman.
How'd that go?
I mean, it's good money if you want to sell part of your soul. That's the way I saw it, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, needless to say, I got pretty sick of that pretty quick. Because of my interest in what we're doing now, and I was reading Think and Grow Rich, and I was just focused on what the biggest saleable skill I had in my work history was, and it was sales. So I was like, shit, I could probably go be a car salesman pretty easily.
Yeah.
Pretty charismatic.
Hey, looks like Lauren's on.
Oh yeah.
How you doing, girly, with the purple hair?
Awesome.
I think that's cool. I showed my daughter your purple hair, and she thought that would be interesting. Now she wants purple hair.
Yeah, I'm setting good example as a good role model to people everywhere. So is Benjamin just helping the rest of the people get on?
Well, I think he's only helping Drea.
Okay.
I noticed in the notes that Tara Darger was going to get on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't know if she's coming on now or for just the discussion in an hour or 45 minutes.
I'll make a Benjamin, I'll help you make like a post. I'm gonna make a post that's tagged that says exactly how to do this. Because clicking on the link just takes you straight to the stream, but you have to be invited to come onto it. So people have to log in first to their Google Plus account. I didn't know that. I thought you just had to click on the link. So
they have to be in there logged in first before they can even get
yeah,
in.
you have to get onto Google Hangouts and then you invite them. Or else the link you give just gives us straight to the Facebook or to the live feed where you don't participate. So I'll post a thing on there that tells everybody how to do it. But you did an awesome job. I'm really proud of you. You're badass.
Thank you. I invited Andrea, I think, like 33 times, so I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe someone needs to go post that up on Facebook right now, because the way that it stands, Lauren, you weren't here when I explained this. I actually have two different accounts, as you can see, right? The account that this is being hosted by, which is my main account, and then this is my my side account, so that I can actually use my phone, which has the better camera, and everybody can hear me, and we won't have all the problems that we had last week with my shitty video and audio.
I'm just gonna call Drea and help her.
If I knew that, I'd be like, just call her.
You look like you're enjoying that food pretty good. What are you eating, man?
It's an omelet,
Hell yeah.
but it's cold as shit because I've been troubleshooting.
And you're outside, huh?
Yeah, I'm actually out in my patio.
Where do you live, Ben?
I live in Hartford, Connecticut.
Huh? Amazing.
Yeah, so it's a bright, sunny, well, kind of sunny, partly cloudy day here, and I'm going to enjoy it because fall's here, and we're not going to have very many of these days left.
Yeah, all the leaves have turned in my area, and most of them have fallen off.
Really?
Where were you at again?
Rexburg, Idaho.
Idaho. Yeah. I used to
Yeah.
live in Montana.
Yeah.
I also used to live in Washington State, in across the water from Seattle in Silverdale when I was in the Navy.
Wow. Bet that was awesome.
Well, it depends on how you look at it.
How do you look at it?
Well, it was kind of overshadowed by the military, because I had a very high op tempo while I was out there. So I was on my submarine, the USS Connecticut. One of the only.
So not many trees on a submarine, huh?
No. But it was always overcast. I was always working long hours, and you know, talk about having suicidal thoughts. I was definitely in a dark place there, and both metaphorically and physically, because on the pier that I was staying at, it was so long. You could put a submarine here and a submarine here, and then we had an aircraft carrier on the other side of the pier. And on a bright sunny day in Washington, which is like, you know, the 2 days out of the year when it's not overcast, it's like, yes, the sun's out, and then the aircraft carrier decides to pull in and literally cast a shadow over us.
Oh.
Yeah.
You guys need tanning beds on that submarine or something so you can get your vitamin D.
No shit.
I'll tell you what, we were clear by the time we came up.
Hey, there's Drea.
Yay!
Yay.
Hey, what's going on? You guys having a party without me?
Hell yeah.
We didn't want to. You just took so long.
No,
I
think
don't
this
know.
is,
I've never done this before.
Google Hangouts or talk to strange people on the internet.
Dre, you're on your phone, huh?
Oh, all the above. No.
You're making
I'm
me
on
dizzy.
my iPad.
Oh.
Sorry. I was trying to get it to prop up so I didn't have to hold it.
Should we get started?
Asia,
Yeah.
take it away.
All right. Let's see. Chapter 2, Desire. All right. The starting point of all achievement. The first step toward riches. When Edmund C. Barnes climbed down from the freight train in Orange, New Jersey, more than 30 years ago, he may have resembled a tramp, but his thoughts were those of a king. As he made his way from the railroad tracks to Thomas A. Edison's office, his mind was at work. He saw himself standing in Edison's presence. He heard himself speaking, or he heard himself asking Mr. Edison for an opportunity to carry out the one consuming obsession of his life, a burning desire, to become the business associate of the great inventor. Barnes' desire was not a hope. It was not a wish. It was a keen, pulsating desire which transcended everything else. It was definite.
Yum.
The desire was not new when he approached Edison. It had been Barnes' dominating desire for a long time. In the beginning, when the desire first appeared in his mind, it may have been, probably, was only a wish. But it was no more wish than when he appeared before Edison with it. A few years later, Edwin C. Barnes stood again before Edison, in the same office where he first met the inventor. This time, his desire had been translated into reality. He was in business with Edison. The dominating dream of his life had become a reality. Today, people who know Barnes envy him because of the break life yielded him. They see him in the days of his triumph without taking the trouble to investigate the cause of his success. Barnes succeeded because he chose a definite goal, placed all his energy, all his willpower, all his effort, everything back of that goal. He did not become the partner of Edison the day he arrived. He was content to start in the most menial work, as long as it provided an opportunity to take even one step toward his cherished goal. 5 years passed before the chance he had been seeking made its appearance. During all those years, not one ray of hope, not one promise of attainment of his desire had been held out to him. To everyone except himself, he appeared only another cog in the Edison business wheel. But in his own mind, he was the partner of Edison every minute of the time, from the very day that he first went to work there. It is a remarkable illustration of the power of a definite desire. Barnes won his goal because he wanted to be a business associate of Mr. Edison more than he wanted anything else. He created a plan by which to attain that purpose. But he burned all bridges behind him. He stood by his desire until it became the dominating obsession of his life, and finally, a fact. When he went to Orange, he did not say to himself, "I will try to induce Edison to give me a job of some sort." That's what it says. He said, "I will see Edison and put him on notice that I have come to go into business with him." He did not say, "I will work there for a few months, and if I get no encouragement, I will quit and get a job somewhere else." He did say, "I will start anywhere. I will do anything Edison tells me to do, but before I'm through, I will be his associate." He did not say, "I will keep my eyes open for another opportunity in case I fail to get what I want in the Edison organization." He said, "There is but one thing in this world that I am determined to have, and that is a business association with Thomas A. Edison. I will burn all bridges behind me and stake my entire future on my ability to get what I want." He left himself no possible way of retreat. He had to win or perish. That is all there is to the Barnes story of success. A long while ago, a great warrior faced a situation which made it necessary for him to make a decision which ensured his success on the battlefield. He was about to send his armies against a powerful foe whose men outnumbered his own. He loaded his soldiers onto boats, sailed to the enemy's country, unloaded soldiers and equipment, and then gave the order to burn the ships that had carried them. Addressing his men before the first battle, he said, "You see the boats going up in smoke. That means we cannot leave these shores alive unless we win. We now have no choice. We win or we perish." They won. Every person who wins in any undertaking must be willing to burn his ships and cut all sources of retreat. Only by doing so can one be sure of maintaining that state of mind known as a burning desire to win, essential to success. The morning after the Great Chicago Fire, a group of merchants stood on State Street, looking at the smoking remains of what had been their stores. They went into a conference to decide if they would try to rebuild or leave Chicago and start over in a more promising section of the country. They reached a decision, all except one, to leave Chicago. The merchant who decided to stay and rebuild pointed a finger at the remains of his store and said, "Gentlemen, on that very spot I will build the world's greatest store, no matter how many times it may bend down." That was more than 50 years ago.
Asia.
Yes. Yes.
Lauren, could you
Yeah.
could you mute your mic because we're getting feedback from Asia from your speakers? Okay, great. Thank you.
That was more than 50 years ago. The store was built. It stands there today, a towering monument to the power of that state of mind known as burning desire. The easy thing for Marshall Field to have done would have been exactly what his fellow merchants did. When the going was hard and the future looked dismal, they pulled up and went where the going was easier. Mark well this difference between Marshall Field and the other merchants. because it is the same difference which distinguishes Edwin C. Barnes from thousands of other young men who have worked in the Edison organization. It is the same difference which distinguishes practically all who succeed from those who fail. Every human being who reaches the age of understanding of the purpose of money wishes for it. Wishing will not bring riches, but desiring riches with a state of mind that becomes an obsession, then planning definite ways and means to acquire riches, and backing those plans with persistence which does not recognize failure, will bring riches. The method by which desire for riches can be transmuted into its financial equivalent consists of 6 definite practical steps. First, fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It is not sufficient merely to say, I want plenty of money, but be definite as to the amount. There is a psychological reason for definiteness, which will be described in a subsequent chapter. Second, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. There is no such reality as something for nothing. Third, establish a definite date when you intend to possess the money you desire. Fourth, create a definite plan for carrying out your desire, and begin at once, whether you are ready or not, to put this plan into action. Fifth, write out a clear, concise statement of the amount of money you intend to acquire, name the time limit for its acquisition, state what you intend to give in return for the money, and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. Sixth, read your written statement aloud twice daily, once just before retiring at night, and once after arising in the morning. As you read, see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of the money. It is important that you follow the instructions described in these 6 steps. It is especially important that you observe and follow the instructions in the 6th paragraph. You may complain that it is impossible for you to see yourself in possession of money before you actually have it. Here is where a burning desire will come to your aid. If you truly desire money so keenly that your desire is an obsession, you will have no difficulty in convincing yourself that you will acquire it. The object is to want money, and to become so determined to have it that you convince yourself you will have it. Only those who become money conscious ever accumulate great riches. Money consciousness means that the mind has become so thoroughly saturated with the desire for money that one can see oneself already in possession of it. To the uninitiated, who has not been schooled in the working principles of the mind, the human mind, these instructions may appear impractical. It may be helpful to all who fail to recognize the soundness of the 6 steps to know that the information they convey was received from Andrew Carnegie, who began as an ordinary laborer in the steel mills, but managed, despite his humble beginning, to make these principles yield him a fortune of considerably more than $100 million. It may be of further help to know that the 6 steps here recommended were carefully scrutinized by the late Thomas A. Edison, who placed his stamp of approval upon them as being not only the steps essential for the accumulation of money, but necessary for the attainment of any definite goal.
I can read, Asia. Asia, do you want me to try?
Go ahead.
Okay. The steps call for no hard labor. They call for no sacrifice. They do not require one to become ridiculous or credulous. To apply them calls for no great amount of education. But the successful application of these 6 steps does call for sufficient imagination to enable one to see and to understand that accumulation of money cannot be left to chance, good fortune, and luck. One must realize that all who have accumulated great fortunes first did a certain amount of dreaming, hoping, wishing, desiring, and planning before they acquired money. You may as well know right here that you can never have riches in great quantities unless you can work yourself into the white heat of desire for money and actually believe you will possess it. You may as well know also that every great leader from the dawn of civilization down to the present was a dreamer. Christianity is the greatest potential power in the world today because its founder was an intense dreamer who had the vision and imagination to see realities in their mental and spiritual form before they had been transmuted into their physical form. If you do not see great riches in your imagination, you will never see them in your bank balance. Never in the history of America has there been so great an opportunity for practical dreamers as now exists. The 6-year economic collapse has reduced all men substantially to the same level. A new race is about to be run. The stakes represent huge fortunes which will be accumulated within the next 10 years. The rules of the race have changed because we now live in a changed world that definitely favors the masses. Those who had but little or no opportunity to win under the conditions existing during the Depression, when fear paralyzed growth and development. We who are in this race for riches should be encouraged to know that this changed world in which we live in is demanding new ideas, new ways of doing things, new leaders, new inventions, new methods of teaching, new methods of marketing, new books, new literature, new features for the radio, new ideas for moving pictures. Whew. Back of all of this demand for new and better things, there is one quality which one must possess to win. And this is the definiteness of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants, and a burning desire to possess it. The business depression marked the death of one age and the birth of another. This changed world requires practical dreamers who can and will put their dreams into action. The practical dreamers have always been and always will be the pattern makers of civilization. We who desire to accumulate riches should remember the real leaders of the world have always been men who harnessed and put into practical use the intangible, unseen forces of unborn opportunity, and have converted those forces or impulses of thought into skyscrapers, cities, factories, airplanes, automobiles, and every form of convenience that makes life more pleasant. Tolerance and an open mind are practical necessities of the dreamer today. Those who are afraid of new ideas are doomed before they start. Never has there been a time more favorable to pioneer than the present. True, there is no wild and woolly West to be conquered as in the days of the covered wagon, but there is a vast business, financial, and industrial world to be remodeled and redirected along new and better lines. In planning to acquire your share of riches, let no one influence you to scorn the dreamer. To win the big stakes in this changed world, you must catch the spirit of the great pioneers of the past, whose dreams have given to civilization all that it has of value. The spirit which serves as the lifeblood of our own country, your opportunity and mine, to develop and market our talents. Let us not forget, Columbus dreamed of an unknown world, staked his life on the existence of such world, and discovered it. Copernicus, the great astronomer, dreamed of a multiplicity of worlds and revealed them. No one denounced him as impractical after he had triumphed. Instead, the world worshipped at his shrine, thus proving once more, success requires no apologies. Failure permits no alibis. If the things you wish to do is right,
It's alibis.
alibi. I don't want to talk about it. It's been a while since I've gone to school. Okay. Don't judge me. Shut it.
So cute.
If the things you wish to do is right and you believe in it, you go ahead and do it. Put your dreams across and never mind that what they say if you meet with temporary defeat, for they, perhaps, do not know that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success. Henry Ford, poor and uneducated, dreamed of a horseless carriage, went to work with what tools he possessed without waiting for opportunity to favor him, and now evidence of his dream belts the entire earth. He has put more wheels into operation than any man who ever lived, because he was not afraid to back his dreams. Thomas Edison dreamed of a lamp that could be operated by electricity, began where he stood to put his dreams into action, and despite more than 10,000 failures, he stood by that dream until he made it a physical reality. Practical dreamers do not quit. Wayland dreamed of a chain of cigar stores, transformed his dream into action, and now the United Cigar Stores occupy the best corners in America. Lincoln dreamed of freedom for the black slaves, put his dreams into action, and barely missed living to see a united North and South translate his dream into reality. The Wright brothers dreamed of a machine that would fly through the air. Now one may see evidence all over the world that they all dreamed soundly. Marconi dreamed of a system for harnessing the intangible forces of the ether. Evidence that he did not dream in vain may be found in every wireless radio in the world. Moreover, Marconi's dream brought the humblest cabin and the most stately manor house side by side. It made the people of every nation on earth backdoor neighbors. It gave the President of the United States a medium by which he may talk to all people of America at one time on short notice. It may interest you to know that Marconi's friends had him taken into custody and examined in a psychopathic hospital. When he announced he had discovered a principle through which he could send messages through the air without aid of wires or other direct physical means of communication, the dreamers of today fare better. The world has come accustomed to new discoveries. Nay, it has shown a willingness to reward the dreamer who gives the world a new idea. The greatest achievement was at first, and for a time, but a dream. The oak sleeps in the acorn, the bird waits in the egg, and the highest vision of the soul, a waking angel stirs. Dreams are the seedlings of reality. Awake and arise and assert yourself, you dreamers of the world. Your star is now in the ascendancy. The world depression brought the opportunity you have been waiting for. It taught people humility, tolerance, and open-mindedness. The world is filled with an abundance of opportunity, which the dreamers of the past never knew. A burning desire to be and to do is the starting point from which the dreamer must take off. Dreams are not born of indifference, laziness, or lack of ambition. Does someone else want to read? Or do you want me to keep going?
I'll keep reading.
Going. Okay, go ahead.
What page did you leave off on?
29.
Alright, that's different from my E1. What was the last thing that you read?
A burning desire to be and to do is a starting point from which the dreamer must take off. Dreams are not born of indifference. Okay, off.
Okay. The world no longer scoffs at the dreamer, nor calls him impractical. If you think it does, take a trip to Tennessee and witness what a dreamer president has done in the way of harnessing and using the great water power of America. A score of years ago, such a dream would have seemed like madness. You have been disappointed. You have undergone defeat. During the Depression, you have felt the great heart within you crushed until it bled. Take courage, for these experiences have tempered the spiritual metal of which you are made. They are assets of incomparable value. Remember, too, that all who succeeded in life get off to a bad start and pass through many heartbreaking struggles before they arrive. The turning point in the lives of those who succeed usually comes at the moment of some crisis, through which they are introduced to their other selves. John Bunyan wrote The Pilgrim's Progress, which is among the finest of all English literature, after he had been confined in prison and sorely punished because of his views on the subject of religion. Henry discovered the genius which slept within his brain after he had met with great misfortune and was confined in a prison cell in Columbus, Ohio. Being forced through misfortune to become acquainted with his other self and to use his imagination, he discovered himself to be a great author instead of a miserable criminal and outcast. Strange and varied are the ways of life, and stranger still are the ways of infinite intelligence, through which men are sometimes forced to undergo all sorts of punishment before discovering their own brains and their own capacity to create useful ideas through imagination. Edison, the world's greatest inventor and scientist, was a tramp telegraph operator. He failed innumerable times before he was driven, finally, to the discovery of the genius which slept within his brain. Charles Dickens began by pasting labels on blacking pots. The tragedy of his first love penetrated the depths of his soul and converted him into one of the world's truly great authors. That tragedy produced first David Copperfield, then a succession of other works that made this a richer and better world for all who read his books. Disappointment over love affairs generally has the effect of driving men to drink and women to ruin, and this because most people never learn the art of transmuting their strongest emotions into dreams of a constructive nature. Helen Keller became deaf, dumb, and blind shortly after birth. Despite her greatest misfortune, she has written her name indelibly in the pages of the history of the great. Her entire life has served as evidence that no one ever is defeated until defeat has been accepted as a reality. Robert Burns was an illiterate country lad. He was cursed by poverty and grew up to be a drunkard in the bargain. I don't know what that means. The world The world was made better for his having lived, because he clothed beautiful thoughts in poetry, and thereby plucked a thorn and planted a rose in its place. Booker T. Washington was born in slavery, handicapped by race and color. Because he was tolerant, had an open mind at all times on all subjects, and was a dreamer, he left his impress for good on an entire race. Beethoven was deaf, Milton was blind, but their names will last long as time endures, because they dreamed and translated their dreams into organized thought. Before passing to the next chapter, kindle anew in your mind the fire of hope, faith, courage, and tolerance. If you have these states of mind and a working knowledge of the principles described, all else that you need will come to you, when you are ready for it. Let Emerson state the thought in these words: every proverb, every book, every byword that belongs to thee for aid and comfort shall surely come home through open or winding passages. Every friend who not thy fantastic will, but the great and tender soul in thee craveth, shall lock thee in his embrace. There is a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. No one is ready for a thing until he believes he can acquire it. The state of mind must be a belief, not mere hope or wish. Open-mindedness is essential for belief. Closed minds do not inspire faith, courage, and belief. Remember, no more effort is required to aim high in life, to demand abundance and prosperity, than is required to accept misery and poverty. A great poet has correctly stated this universal truth through these lines. I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is just an employer. He gives what you ask. He gives you what you ask, but once you have set the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn dismayed that any wage I'd asked of life, life would have willingly paid. Desire outwits Mother Nature. As a fitting climax to this chapter, I wish to introduce one of the most unusual persons I have ever known. I first saw him 24 years ago, a few minutes after he was born. He came into the world without any physical sign of ears, and the doctor admitted when pressed for an opinion that the child might be deaf and mute for life. I challenged the doctor's opinion. I had the right to do so. I was the child's father. I too reached a decision and rendered an opinion, but I expressed the opinion silently in the secrecy of my own heart. I decided that my son would hear and speak. Nature could send me a child without ears, but nature could not induce me to accept the reality of the affliction. In my own mind, I knew that my son would hear and speak. How? I was sure there must be a way, and I knew I would find it. I thought of the words of the immortal Emerson. The whole course of things goes to teach us faith. We need only obey. There is guidance for each of us, and by lowly listening, we shall hear the right word. The right word? Desire. More than anything else, I desired that my son should not be a deaf mute. From that desire, I never receded, not for a second. Many years previously, I had written, only our limitations are those we set up in our own minds. For the first time, I wondered if that statement were true. Lying on the bed in front of me was a newly born child without the natural equipment of hearing. Even though he might hear and speak, he was obviously disfigured for life. Surely this was a limitation which that child had not set up in his own mind. What could I do about it? Somehow I would find a way to transplant into that child's mind my own burning desire for ways and means of conveying sound to his brain without the aid of ears. As soon as the child was old enough to cooperate, I would fill his mind so completely with a burning desire to hear that nature would, by means of her own, translate it into physical reality. All this thinking took place in my own mind, but I spoke of it to no one. Every day I renewed the pledge I bade made to myself, that's what it says in mine, not to accept a deaf mute for a son. As he grew older and began to take notice of things around him, we observed that he had a slight degree of hearing. When he reached the age when children usually begin talking, he made no attempt to speak, but we could tell by his actions that he could hear certain sounds slightly. That was all I wanted to know. I was convinced that if he could hear even slightly, he might develop still greater hearing capacity. Then something happened which gave me hope. It came from an entirely unexpected source. We bought a Victrola. When the child heard the music for the first time, he went into ecstasies and promptly appropriated the machine. He soon showed a preference for certain records, among them It's a Long Way to Tipperary. On one occasion, he played that piece over and over for almost 2 hours, standing in front of the Victrola with his teeth clamped on the edge of the case. The significance of this self-formed habit of his did not become clear to us until years afterward, for we had never heard of the principle of bone conduction of sound at that time.
Do you want me to read?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Shortly after he appropriated the Victrola, I discovered that he could hear me quite clearly when I spoke with my lips touching his mastoid bone, or at the base of his brain. These discoveries placed in my possession the necessary media by which I began to translate into reality my burning desire to help my son to develop hearing and speech. By that time, he was making stabs at certain words. The outlook was far from encouraging, but with desire backed by faith, knows no such word as impossible. Having determined that he could hear the sound of my voice plainly, I began immediately to transfer to his mind the desire to hear and speak. I soon discovered that the child enjoyed bedtime stories, so I went to work, creating stories designed to develop him in self-reliance, imagination, and a keen desire to hear and to be normal. There was one story in particular which I emphasized by giving it some new and dramatic coloring each time it was told. It was designed to plant in his mind the thought that his affliction was not a liability, but an asset of great value. Despite the fact that all the philosophy I had examined clearly indicated that every adversity brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage, I must confess that I had not the slightest idea how this affliction could ever become an asset. However, I continued my practice of wrapping that philosophy in bedtime stories, hoping that time would come when he would find some plan by which his handicap could be made to serve some useful purpose. Reason told me plainly that there was no adequate compensation for the lack of ears and natural hearing equipment. Desire backed by faith pushed reason aside and inspired me to carry on. As I analyze the experience in retrospect, I can see now that my son's faith in me had much to do with the astounding results. He did not question anything I told him. I sold him the idea that he had a distinct advantage over his older brother, and that this advantage would reflect itself in many ways. For example, the teachers in school would observe that he would have no ears, and because of this, they would show him special attention and treat him with extraordinary kindness. They always did. His mother saw to that by visiting the teachers and arranging with them to give the child the extra attention necessary. I sold him the idea, too, that when he became old enough to sell newspapers, his older brother had already become a newspaper merchant, he would have a big advantage over his brother, for the reason that people would pay him extra money for his wares, because they could see that he was a bright, industrious boy, despite the fact that he had no ears. We could notice that gradually the child's hearing was improving. Moreover, he had not the slightest tendency to be self-conscious because of his affliction. When he was about 7, he showed the first evidence that our method of servicing his mind was bearing fruit. For several months, he begged for the privilege of selling newspapers, but his mother would not give her consent. She was afraid that his deafness made it unsafe for him to go onto the street alone. Finally, he took matters into his own hands. One afternoon, when he was left at home with the servants, he climbed through the kitchen window, shinning to the ground, and set out on his own. He borrowed 6 cents in capital from our neighborhood shoemaker, invested it in paper, sold out, reinvested, and kept repeating until late in the evening. After balancing his accounts and paying back the 6 cents which he had borrowed from his banker, he had a net profit of 42 cents. When we got home that night, we found him in bed sleeping with the money tightly clenched in his hand. His mother opened his hand, removed the coins, and cried. Of all things, crying over her son's first victory seemed so inappropriate. My reaction was the reverse. I laughed heartily, for I knew that my endeavor to plant in the child's mind an attitude and faith in himself had been successful. His mother saw in his first business venture a deaf little boy who had gone out in the streets and risked his life to earn money. I saw a brave, ambitious, self-reliant little businessman whose stock in himself had been increased 100% because he had gone into business on his own initiative and had won. The transaction pleased me because I knew that he had given evidence of a trait of resourcefulness that would go with him throughout all of his life. Later events proved this to be true. When his older brother wanted something, he would lie down on the floor, kick his feet in the air, and cry for it and get it. When the little deaf boy wanted something, he would plan a way to earn the money, then buy it for himself. He still follows that plan. Truly, my own son has taught me that handicaps can be converted into stepping stones on which one may climb towards some worthy goal, unless they are accepted as obstacles and used as alibis. The deaf little boy went through
Good job.
Yeah, I'm the smartest. Yeah. The deaf little boy went through the grades, high school, and college without being able to hear his teacher, accepting that they would shout loudly at close range. He did not go to a school for the deaf. We would not permit him to learn sign language. We were determined that he should live a normal life and associate with normal children, and we stood by that decision, although it cost us many heated debates with school officials. While he was in high school, he tried an electric hearing aid, but it was of no value to him, due, we believe, to a condition that was disclosed when the child was 6 by Dr. J. Gordon Wilson of Chicago, when he operated on one side of the boy's head and discovered there was no sign of natural hearing equipment. During his last week in college, 18 years after the operation, something happened which marked the most important turning point of his life. Through what seemed to be mere chance, he came into possession of another electrical hearing device, which was sent to him on trial. He was slow about testing it due to his disappointment with similar devices. Finally, he picked the instrument up and more or less carelessly placed it on his head, hooked up the battery, and lo, as if by a stroke of magic, his lifelong desire for normal hearing became a reality. For the first time in his life, he heard practically as well as any person with normal hearing. God moves in his mysterious ways. He wonders to perform. Overjoyed because of the changed world which had been brought to him through his hearing device, he rushed to the telephone, called his mother, and heard her voice perfectly. The next day, he plainly heard the voice of his professors in class, for the first time in his life. Previously, he could hear them only when they shouted at short range. He heard the radio. He heard the talking pictures. For the first time in his life, he could converse freely with other people without the necessity of having them to speak loudly. Truly, he had come into possession of a changed world. We had refused to accept nature's error, and by persistent desire, we had induced nature to correct that error through the only practical means available. Desire had commenced to pay dividends, but the victory was not yet complete. The boy still had to find a definite and practical way to convert his handicap into an equivalent asset. Hardly realizing the significance of what had already been accomplished, but intoxicated with the joy of his newly discovered world of sound, he wrote a letter to the manufacturer of the hearing aid, enthusiastically describing his experience. Something in his letter, something perhaps which was not written in the lines, but back of them, caused the company to invite him to New York. When he arrived, he was escorted through the factory, and while talking with the chief engineer, telling him about his changed world, a hunch, an idea, or an inspiration, call it whatever you wish, flashed into his mind. It was this impulse of thought which converted his affliction into an asset, destined to pay dividends in both money and happiness to thousands for all the time to come. The sum and substance of that impulse of thought was this. It occurred to him that he might be of help to millions of deafened people who had gone through life without the benefit of hearing devices, if he could find a way to tell them the story of his changed world. Then and there, he reached a decision to devote the remainder of his life to render his useful service to the hard of hearing. For an entire month, he carried on an intensive research, during which he analyzed the entire marketing system of the manufacturer of the hearing device, and created ways and means of communicating with the hard of hearing all over the world, for the purpose of sharing with them his newly discovered changed world. When this was done, he put into writing a 2-year plan based upon his findings. When he presented the plan to the company, he was instantly given a position for the purpose of carrying out his ambition. Little did he dream, when he went to work, he was destined to bring hope and practical relief to thousands of deafened people who, without his help, would have been doomed forever to mutism. Shortly after he became associated with the manufacturer of the hearing aid, he invited me to attend a class conducted by his company for the purpose of teaching deaf mutes to hear and to speak. I had never heard of such a form of education. Therefore, I visited the class, skeptical but hopeful that my time would not be entirely wasted. Here I saw a demonstration which gave me a greatly enlarged vision of what I had done to arouse and keep alive in my son's mind the desire for normal hearing. I saw deaf mutes actually being taught to hear and speak, although through application of the selfsame principles I had used more than 20 years previously in saving my own son from deaf mutism. Do you want to read, Asia?
Sure. Let me catch up to where you were.
Okay. Do you want me to keep reading and then you can catch up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thus, through some strange turn of the wheel of fate, my son Blair and I have been destined to aid in correcting deaf mutism for all those as yet unborn, because we are the only living human beings, as far as I know, who have established definitely the fact that deaf mutism can be corrected to the extent of restoring to normal life those who will suffer with this affliction. It has been done for one, it would be done for others.
Why don't you just keep going? I don't know where you are.
Okay. There is no doubt in my mind that Blair would have been a deaf mute all his life if his mother and I had not managed to shape his mind as we did. The doctor who attended the birth told us, confidentially, the child might not ever hear or speak. A few weeks ago, Dr. Irving Voorhees, a noted specialist on such cases, examined Blair very thoroughly. He was astounded when he had learned how well my son now hears and speaks, and said his examination indicated that theoretically the boy should not be able to hear at all, but the lad does hear. Despite
I found where you are.
Okay, awesome. I'll finish this paragraph. Despite the fact that the X-ray pictures show that there is no opening in the skull whatsoever from where his ears should be to the brain.
When I planted in his mind the desire to hear and talk and live as a normal person, there went with that impulse some strange influence which caused nature to become bridge builder and span the gulf of silence between his brain and the outer world, by some means which the keenest medical specialists have not been able to interpret. It would be sacrilege for me to even conjecture as to how nature performed this miracle. It would be unforgivable if I neglected to tell the world as much as I know of the humble part I assumed in this strange experience. It is my duty and my privilege to say I believe, and not without reason, that nothing is impossible to the person who backs desire with enduring faith. Verily, a burning desire has devious ways of transmuting itself into physical equivalent. Blair desired normal hearing. Now he has it. He was born with a handicap which might easily have sent one with a less defined desire to the street with a bundle of pencils and a tin cup. That handicap now promises to serve as the medium by which he will render useful service to many millions of hard of hearing also, to give him useful employment at adequate financial compensation the remainder of his life. The little white lies I planted in his mind when he was a child, by leading him to believe his affliction would become a great asset which he could capitalize, has justified itself. Verily, there is nothing, right or wrong, which belief plus burning desire cannot make real. These qualities are free to everyone. In all my experience in dealing with men and women who had personal problems, I never handled a single case which more definitely demonstrates the power of desire. Authors sometimes make the mistake of writing of subjects of which they have but superficial or very elementary knowledge. It has been my good fortune to have had the privilege of testing the soundness of the power of desire through the affliction of my own son. Perhaps it was providential that the experience came as it did, for surely no one is better prepared than he to serve as an example of what happens when desire is put to the test. If Mother Nature bends to the will of desire, Is it logical that mere men can defeat a burning desire? Strange and imponderable is the power of the human mind. We do not understand the method by which it uses every circumstance, every individual, every physical thing within its reach as a means of transmuting desire into its physical counterpart. Perhaps science will uncover this secret. I planted in my son's mind the desire to hear and to speak as any normal person hears and speaks. That desire has now become a reality. I planted in his mind the desire to convert his greatest handicap into his greatest asset. That desire has been realized. The modus operandi by which this astounding result was achieved is not hard to describe. It consisted of three very definite facts. First, I mixed faith with the desire for normal hearing, which I passed on to my son. Second, I communicated my desire to him in every conceivable way available through persistent, continuous effort over a period of years. Third, he believed me. As this chapter was being completed, news came of the death of Schumacher Heinck. One short paragraph in the news dispatch gives the clue to this unusual woman's stupendous success as a singer. I quote the paragraph because the clue it contains is none other than desire. Early in her career, Schumacher Heinck visited the director of the Vienna Court Opera to have him test her voice. But he did not test it. After taking one look at the awkward and poorly dressed girl, he exclaimed none too gently, "With such a face and with no personality at all, how can you ever expect to succeed in opera? My good child, give up the idea, buy a sewing machine, and go to work. You can never be a singer." Never is a long time. The director of the Vienna Court Opera knew much about the technique of singing. He knew little about the power of desire, when it assumes the proportion of an obsession. If he had known more of that power, he would not have made the mistake of condemning genius without giving it an opportunity. Several years ago, one of my business associates became ill. He became worse as time went on and finally was taken to the hospital for an operation. Just before he was wheeled into the operating room, I took a look at him and wondered how anyone as thin and emaciated as he could possibly go through a major operation successfully. The doctor warned me that there was little, if any, chance of my ever seeing him alive again. But that was the doctor's opinion. It was not the opinion of the patient. Just before he was wheeled away, he whispered feebly, "Do not be disturbed, Chief. I will be out of here in a few days." The attending nurse looked at me with pity, but the patient did come through safely. After it was all over, his physician said, "Nothing but his own desire to live saved him. He never would have pulled through if he had not refused to accept the possibility of death." I believe in the power of desire backed by faith, because I have seen this power lift men from lowly beginnings to places of power and wealth. I have seen it rob the grave of its victims. I have seen it serve as the medium by which men staged a comeback after having been defeated in 100 different ways. I have seen it provide my own son with a normal, happy, successful life, despite nature's having sent him into the world without ears. How can one harness the use of the power of desire? This has been answered through this and the subsequent chapters of this book. This message is going out to the world at the end of the longest and perhaps the most devastating depression America has ever known. It is reasonable to presume that the message may come to the attention of many who have been wounded by the Depression, those who have lost their fortunes, others who have lost their positions, and great numbers who must reorganize their plans and stage a comeback. To all these I wish to convey the thought that all achievement, no matter what may be its nature or its purpose, must begin with an intense, burning desire for something definite. Through some strange and powerful principle of mental chemistry which she has never divulged, nature wraps up in the impulse of strong desire that something which recognizes no such word as impossible and accepts no such reality as failure.
That's awesome.
Wow! That's all I can say. My mind is like this. Oh, it's so good! Oh, it's so fucking good!
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Man, that was amazing. I just feel like this desire, like I just want to go do something amazing right now. It's fucking awesome.
So let's talk about it. Asia, did you read that post I made, that I posted, my article?
I did, yeah. Yeah, I was waiting, and I read, I started reading Benjamin's too, but I was waiting for Lauren.
I don't want to talk about it.
Well, it's funny. I think that whole chapter was so much about spiritual creation. I mean,
Yeah.
desire plays part. I wrote some things down. I loved how he talked about the dreamers and the pioneers, and then he talked about how failure brings a seed of success. So often we defeat ourselves because we're afraid of failure, and yet failure is not anything to be afraid of.
Mm.
You know, I mean, we hold back avoiding failure, and yet failure, he sees failure as an advantage. There's an advantage because there's a lesson. I love that.
And I love that he says there is no failure because ultimately failure means giving up. You know?
Yeah, that's the only failure, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, failure does not mean setback. Failure is giving up and saying I'm not going to do this anymore.
I think that success and failure are not mutually exclusive. They come together. They are bedfellows all the way to the end. Because, as Michael Jordan says, you know, I'm going to paraphrase his quote. He goes, you know, I've lost so many games, you know, like 30 or like 60-something times he was counted on for the winning game shot, and he didn't make it. And he failed and he failed and he failed over and over again, and that is why he succeeds.
That's awesome. Do you guys remember, did I talk about failing fast last time?
Yes.
Yeah.
That business strategy, how companies actually look to risk a lot so they can fail fast and learn the lessons of what is called failure. It's not actually failure the way we usually think about it, but it advances them to profitability quicker, and that's what they wanted. I love that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, the failing fast is cool, definitely an integral part of it, but I also think that it could be misconstrued to just go and do something, and if it doesn't work, then do something else that ends up failing. Books and seminars and coaches and mentors and all that other stuff where you double down on your own education, I think that learning from someone else and someone else's mistakes is definitely far better than, you know, conducting them yourself. So fail faster strategically is what I would say.
I love that.
Yeah, it really shouldn't even be called failing fast. It should be called gaining experience quicker, because that's really where the advantage is.
Right. Well, you know, the word failure doesn't exist anyway. Failure is an ideal. Failure is a concept. You can't go out and buy, you know, a bunch of failures, or you can't like pick a failure off a tree. It's something that man made up. And
Love it.
because it's something that man made up, it can easily be taken away as well because it's not real. So if you don't believe in failure, in fact, there's been many different people that I've read that have
You're
said,
saying it's just a perspective, right?
yeah, just remove the entire ideal outside of your reality.
Yeah.
To where, you know, if something bad happens, in fact, most successful people that I've read about, when something bad happens to them, they go, you know what? That was really bad, but something really great is about to happen because that was shit. And that's just the way that they see it. They see, oh, you know what? That was really bad that it happened, but I know something even better is about to come. And so they keep looking for the better part.
Yeah.
So I love that perspective, but I also love the idea that there's something better in failure. He said, what he said was failure brings a seed of success. So valuing what was considered a failure, I love that perspective. I mean, your perspective is that there's going to be balance. I absolutely believe that, and I love it. But to find the value in something going wrong, you know, the lesson of how to not allow it to go wrong next time. I love that.
I would love to share like my own experience with this.
Go for it.
So for me, like it was interesting when I was married to Mason. This was only in May. Like only in May was I married to Mason, and for some reason my business was not taking off. It was not taking off. It wasn't until him and I got divorced. I became this single mom living in this house, like this dirty little house. I had no money, nothing. And it was like the lowest point I had ever experienced. I was like sneaking onto the UTA train to take my kids back and forth to Ogden to pick them up. I'm on the UTA train. I have no money, none. I'm wondering, how am I going to pay for my utilities? How am I going to have food to feed my kids? Like I was like the lowest point I'd ever been financially. And then a fucking officer gets on the train and is like, let me see your ticket. I didn't have one. I got a ticket for $146 for driving on the train without a ticket. I just bawled. I just started crying, and I was like, never again will I ever be this fucking poor, ever. And from like that point on, shit shifted for me. I was just like, it created this burning desire within me to never be so poor and so like the word is like a victim, you know? So that failure, that because I was in that situation, it ignited this, you know, I burned all bridges. I couldn't rely on a husband anymore. Like it was me. And that's why I like trust that this divorce has been perfect for me, because it was my shooting off point to my business. Like, and this business that I'm creating is going to change the world. It's going to bring hope and faith to so many people. So yeah, I see it now. I'm like, oh my God, it's beautiful. Like being in the moment, it sucked ass. And I seriously just wanted to crawl under the train and die. But it created like this like burning desire within me to just never do that again. So
isn't that awesome? You can relate to people who are going to come to you for your coaching now.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought, because being in the lowest spot, all these guys I look to, they all had a time like that. Yeah. So it's kind of like building the process to becoming a great coach, you know? I mean, everyone has to be able to understand.
Yeah.
I think that everybody who you know, ends up really successful has that one story or string of stories where they, you know, they just, you know, had it really rough and you know, had a bad time. Lauren, you talked about, you mentioned something that stood out to me. You know, the way that we communicate our language, you know, kind of gives way to our internal mindset. So I heard you talk about how, you know, you didn't want to be that poor again, you know, on the bus, and I'll invite you to look at a new distinction.
Let's do it.
Poor versus broke. All right?
Yes.
And you talked about the owner victim mindset. Well, this would be the broke versus poor mindset. Poor is a state of mind. Poor is you thinking, or you know, someone thinking that I am not worth a lot and I'm poor. And when you hear that word, I am, that is your identity. But being broke implies that it's temporary, that it's only a circumstance, and you can change that, right? So Donald Trump was broke nearly $1 billion. I think it was like $9 billion. You know, he ended up, and he owed at least $1 billion, you know, of his own personally. Like he owes, I will personally vouch for $1 billion. He was that much in the hole, and he didn't declare bankruptcy, but he was definitely broke, but he wasn't poor.
Love it.
He pulled himself back out of that.
I love that. I would have to say I was poor, though. Like, I was in that mindset of not seeing that value, and actually the shifts did not come externally. They actually came internally first, and it came from me seeing my value and seeing what I have to offer the world. Like, does that make sense? So it shifted from being poor to rich. And the funny thing is, if you look at my financial status in this moment, not much has changed a ton. I want to be honest. Not much has really changed a ton. But inside, I feel like $1 million fucking dollars. Like, it's amazing. I'm in, like, basically a similar situation, but now I know it's broke. I'm not poor. I'm the richest fucking girl in the world.
I love that example, Ben. I used to use that when I was selling coaching because I would get so many people on the phone that would say the biggest problem they have is their finances. They wanted to change that. And I said, well, don't you think that you need to invest in your mindset? Because that's what coaching is going to do for you. Imagine in your state right now, and this is what I would tell them, in your state right now, if we could take you out of your body and put Donald Trump in, how long would he stay in the life that you're in? Because he has a different mindset. It goes back to Einstein. Match the frequency of the reality you want. You cannot help but get that reality. And so that's why I was convincing them, you need to change your beliefs and the way you see the world.
Yeah. You know what? What's kind of odd, and it's very strange how something from way back in your childhood comes up, and you're like, wow, where did that come from? But I remember I had a very rough childhood. I was bullied. I moved around a lot, and it was hard for me to make friends. And I remember that I would form a strategy for the new school that I was about to move to and be like, you know what, Ben? It's going to be different this time. You're going to be cool. You're going to be one of the popular kids, and everyone's going to like you. And I went into each one of those schools just with the wrong mindset. But I remember some people, being absolutely dorky looking, and they were like cool, and I'm like, how the hell is this even happening? Like, I at least, like, in my mind, am better than that. But then I realized that it doesn't matter what I look like on the outside, because how I am on the outside could be a popular person too, or could be a person who's good at music, and not the person that I was identifying myself as. It took me many years to break through that, but that was pretty cool.
Love it.
So this is my point. Spiritual creation really matters. Like, who you are inside will reflect in your reality. That's why it's so freaking important. Is how the beliefs you hold, the way you see the world, and who you are. I just love that. It turns into real things. And frankly, Lauren, you're going to be very rich.
I am very rich.
But I mean, you're going to be wealthy.
Yeah, I know.
Well, it's coming pretty solid.
Yeah. Did anybody get a chance to read my PDF? I know I posted it up pretty late last night.
No.
Yeah, I started to, but I haven't finished it.
Yeah, me too. I started to and I fell asleep. Not because it was boring, just because it was late.
Yeah, I was actually gonna go to bed early last night, but then, like, when you're ticking things off in your head, you're like, did I get that done? Did I get that done? And I'm like, shit, I didn't write that thing. So I started writing it out, and I'm like, physical creation, I'm humbled by it. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna do a stream of consciousness here and start writing. 3 hours later, I'm like, all right, let me post this finally and go to bed. So, but the point that I bring that up is that I talk about the new Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And John, you're talking about, who you are on the inside is who you're going to, be on the outside and what you manifest. The new Psycho-Cybernetics is all about your self-image.
I got to read that book. I've heard about it.
Well, have you heard of Dan Kennedy?
No.
Okay, Dan Kennedy is he's probably one of the top marketers that just about anyone will point to. Frank Kern will point to him. Ryan Dice points to him. I don't know if you guys know anything about internet marketing, but Dan Kennedy ended up revising the old book, because the original Psycho-Cybernetics was released in the 60s, and then Dan went through and revised it back in 2001.
You think it's better?
I think it's. I would listen to the one with Dan Kennedy. Actually, so the course, he has an audio course, all right, and I don't know how much it's worth, but that's irrelevant, because every one of you can go onto YouTube and it's on there. The whole 6 hours is on there on YouTube.
What's it called?
The new Psycho-Cybernetics. If you aren't sure about the spelling, I talk about it in that PDF.
Okay. I just read that book. I love it.
You
Really?
did, Andrea?
Audiobook.
But did you
Okay,
read the
so
old
what-
one or the new one?
The Dan Kennedy, the one that you're talking about.
What's your takeaways from it?
Oh, I just the power of your mind, you know, and the abilities that we have. I really get to reread it because now the context in that book are escaping my mind. But
The original is the one that changed Gerald Rogers' life, right? That's the one he's always talking about, psychocybernetics.
Really?
he suggests.
Yep. Yep.
Interesting. Well, it definitely, it's in my top 5 of,
Really?
of books. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm just reading everything you tell me, Ben.
Well, you know, I'm going to have an never-ending supply because I'm constantly reading stuff.
Can you
and pulling things from
recommend
here and there.
Can you recommend a book on speed reading so we can read everything you recommend?
Okay, so
Oh my gosh, he does.
Ben,
Yes.
can I ask you, what is your routine for reading? Because a
Yeah.
lot of times I like to do the audiobook because I can put it on a couple times fast, and then when I'm just doing whatever, I can have it playing. But I also like to sit and read, but then I fight that because I know that sometimes I don't want to make time to sit and read. But what is your
Right.
process?
Okay. Well, I'll answer it by answering a better question, which is, how do you read the best parts, right?
There are
of
no
a book?
bad questions. Only bad answers.
Okay, I'll go with you on that one. So, all right. So you guys have all heard of Pareto's law, right? Which is the 80-20 principle.
No. Tell it.
Okay, so
No.
80% of what you do is irrelevant, and only 20% actually gets you the results that you actually want. So if you've ever worked and been employed, and there was a group of employees, you know that, say, out of 5 people that work there, well, maybe only 2 of those people actually did the work, and the other 3, you don't know why they were there. They could have left, and the work still would have got done because only 20% makes up for 80% of the results. So with that and that Pareto's principle, it's P-A-R-E-T-O, Pareto. And so using that theory, reading a book, only about 20% of the book has 80% of the information, okay, that actually is going to be relevant. So and here's how I read a book. I first pick up the book and I read the back cover, and then I read the inside flap. All right, what's it about? The very overall general idea of the book. Then I flip through to the table of contents and I read the table of contents. Now, if the table of contents are written in a way that I think is appropriate, it'll actually tell you what the chapter's about, and it'll tell you like the subtitles in that particular chapter. So you get an idea of what the book's about. Then I'll do a quick skimming of the book. I'm talking a minute, maybe 2 minutes, to just skim through the book, all right, all the way to the end. Then I'll go back through another time, all right, and the things that popped out of me on the table of contents, I'll go and I'll flip to those, and I'll spend maybe a minute or 2 minutes on each of those chapters. Not every chapter, just the chapters that speak out to me, because there's a lot of stuff that I already know, right? My thing is, if I could pick up a book and get at least one good idea out of it, it's worth the investment. And then the third time around, I'll actually focus on a particular chapter. But like I said, I'm looking for 1 to 2 really good nuggets that I haven't heard of before, and then I can put the book back on the shelf because I just got everything that I needed out of that book. The audiobooks that you mentioned, Andrea, that's good. I listen to audiobooks too. I actually listen to audio programs more than audiobooks. But because the audiobook, even if you play it faster, you still have to go through the book. And sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes you'll find an author that's just everything that he says is gold. Like Dane here, Lauren, that Audible that I had you download, that's amazing.
I'm so glad, because I was like, shit, I just bought a fucking Audible book. Okay, good. I'm glad.
Yeah, so you know, there are exceptions, but I like to just pick up a physical book and then go through it, and that's how I read books fast.
Love it.
Hey,
That's
tell us
amazing.
about the YouTube thing. What's this 6 hour with psycho-cybernetics? How do we find that? Is it all 6 hours, or is it like 6 1 hours, or what?
Just type in the new Psycho-Cybernetics into YouTube, and it's the full 6 hours.
Okay.
And Dan Kennedy is the one that's actually narrating.
All right. So
Can I-
he reads the book.
What's that?
He reads the book.
Actually, no. He actually says a lot of stuff that's not even in the book, which I think is, you know, even it's like a supplement to the book.
Okay.
So, and in my opinion, I like Audible and audio programs, especially when it's read by the author, because then you can actually get his voice tone,
Yeah.
you know, when you listen to it, because communication is broken down into 3 different areas. 7% is the words that you use, 38% is the voice tone, and the rest of the percentage is your body language.
Yeah.
That's what communication actually is. So
do I still need the book if I watch that video?
no,
Awesome.
I'll always say buy the book too, because that's just who I am, and I believe in building a big library. But
Yeah.
you don't need to buy the book in order to get the main, you know, principles, especially around self-image. Definitely around self-image. I tell you, you know, if you go through that program and you tell me that it wasn't worth your time, you know, I'll pay you $100.
Okay. All
So-
right. Awesome.
So going back to desire, I mean, sorry, I love what you said. Like, oh, that was really good. Like, I have all my notes written about how to read a book, sincerely.
Yeah, me too.
But sorry, sometimes I can just be abrupt like that and just go into my own little thought.
Okay, Lauren.
Okay, so something that I was thinking about was when he was saying at the very end, and he kind of was going over like the power of the mind, and after everything that happened with his son, and he said, first, I mixed faith with the desire for normal hearing, which I passed on to my son. Second, I communicated my desire for him in every conceivable way available through persistent, continuous effort over a period of years. Third, he believed me. And what I received when I was hearing that, I was like, holy shit, that is Jesus to a T. Like, does that make sense? Like, I do a ton of study on Yeshua. Like, he is just like my idol. I adore him because I honestly believe before I die, I'm going to be fucking levitating. I'm going to be turning water to wine. Like, I'm going to be doing that stuff. Because my belief is that the reason why he was doing that was trying to show everybody that that was possible. Like, and that's what he was doing, like, in his words. Like, he mixed faith with desire. And then persistently, and he you know, created scripture so that people could see. And then all we have to do at the very end was all his son had to do was have belief on his father's words that was possible. So I was like, holy shit, like, what has Jesus, and then what has he created here? You know, he even mentions in this book about how Jesus was one of these great, you know, pioneers of shifting shit around, and he is still affecting that. And I was just thinking, holy crap, like, it just hit me that, like, all of those miracles that I've always wanted to create, like, whenever I heard about, like, Moses and parting the Red Sea, like, there was always this desire in my heart as a child that was just like, I'm going to do that. Like, I'm going to turn water to wine. Like, I'm going to find a coin in a fish. Like, I'm going to totally do all of that stuff. And it hit for me today that that is possible and that that's going to happen. And that was just exciting for me. Like, yeah.
Lauren, I love that. Can I tell you what that makes me think of?
Yeah.
when listening to Abraham Hicks, they describe the law of attraction, which of course is a law that Jesus put into place, that it doesn't allow us to jump from level 1 to level 5, whatever that means. It takes a while, and I honestly believe there's a great advantage in that. It keeps our sanity, but
Yeah.
but if we consistently expose ourselves to a steady diet of truth, that truth will become ours fully.
Yeah.
It just takes some time and persistence, and I love how you describe it. The guy bred into his son this belief that he could have hearing.
Yeah.
And over time, it really became true for his son, and then, of course, it reflected in his life.
Yeah, and the physical whatever wasn't there. Like, he did not have the freaking equipment to do that. And it was interesting because yesterday I went to church for the first time in a very long time. And the guy that was teaching was like, so we're going to have physical ailments like depression and anxiety that just can't be healed in this life. And I raised my hand and I was like, actually, I said, I don't believe that at all. I was like, I was diagnosed with bipolar. I was on every type of medication you could ever imagine, and I have been healed of that. And I was just like, that's bullshit. Like, that's not truth. And I was just like, Jesus took a blind man and made him blind and made him see. And now you're saying that we can't be healed of our ailments? And then this story just was just like even more proof to me that absolutely we can. We can have whatever we want, no matter what Mother Nature says. You know what I mean? That quote that says, Mother Nature bends to the will of desire.
All right, I want to cut in here. I've been listening a lot, but I've been kind of holding back too because there's a couple things about this chapter that really bother me, and I don't really want to rain on anybody's parade.
I want to hear it. I want to
bring it, Asia.
I'm going to tell you. You're going to hear it right now. And the first one is what you just brought up, and that is like us versus Mother Nature. I really, really hate that paradigm. And for me, I think like if you want to use the religious stories we have, in particular with Christianity, as an analogy, we've really come a long way from the Garden of Eden. And I think that's because of that separation that we're creating. So personally, I don't believe nature should be defeated for any fucking, man-made petty desire, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, I'm not going to hold anybody back.
Can you expand on that? Can you give like a literal example of what you mean?
Elaborate.
Yeah, so, all right, so we've got this civilization that we've been working on for like the past, 10,000 years?
Uh-huh.
And we've created a lot of comfort for ourselves through technology. But I don't know if you guys realize that in order for that comfort to exist, it requires basically the destruction of both the natural planet environment and countless other species have been destroyed along the way and still continue to for our man-made comfort. So for me, that's not really that's not really worth it, Now,
so
something.
Asia,
What's that?
What you're saying is we could not have these comforts without destroying those things?
Yeah, is that what you're saying?
So yeah.
Okay.
I mean, as
I
it
don't
is
believe that.
now, I don't know how else that could be. But
Can you give an example? Because that doesn't sound true to me.
Okay, so this laptop I'm talking to you guys on, right? This MacBook Pro that I've got, it's built out of metal, which had to be mined from the earth in a strip mine, probably in China, for low-wage labor. There were species that lived on that land before. It was probably some sort of mountain. All of them were diverted and displaced because of that strip mining. For me to have this laptop, I mean, it's a beautiful thing, but I don't know. This is why I said I don't want to rain on anybody's parade because I'm pretty far out there. But
no, I love it.
It just bothers me.
See, I don't think that had to be though.
Yeah.
I don't think the earth hurts at all for us taking metal out of it. I think people who are underpaid hurt, but that's our mistake. I think animals can still live in harmony with humans while we do our thing, and it's just man's mistakes that are a problem. But I still think we could create what we want in harmony with Mother Nature. I don't think it's a versus.
I would love to say I love that opinion, Asia. Like, I see that actually, and I feel like my opinion on what it has been is that the world has been overtaken by. Anyway, but what I almost see it as, I feel like, is we've come. Like, that was a stepping stone. Like it was a stair or a rung on a ladder. And I feel like it's swinging back the other way. Like we were like, oh, like all excited, like, oh my God, steel, look what we can create. And like, you know, and then we started depleting the world and the earth. But I feel like our generation is coming up and saying, yo, like we can't treat the earth like this. We need to shift. And I believe that we will come to a point where we don't have to deplete the world of these things, and we'll come up and receive new ways of technology that doesn't deplete the earth. I feel like that was just like a stepping stone so that we could see all that we could create. But now you see cars, like electric cars coming out and green stuff coming out everywhere. You know, I feel like it was just a stepping stone. And we'll use that, and in our generation's like, no, we're not going to destroy the earth. We need to find a new way. And so now all of the new ideas are in harmony with the world. You know, I see that as like a stepping stone. Like, hey, we can have all this technology and we can still create an awesome world.
I agree.
Well, I hope that's really true, because that would be a very beautiful dream to come into existence. But
sounds crazy, right?
I think it still remains to be seen. And on some level, personally, this is just my personal opinion, I think that the only truly sustainable form of humans living is an indigenous way of living. And that's just my opinion. I mean,
yeah.
There's so many people on this planet at this point that you know, it wouldn't even be possible for all of us to live that way anymore. So we are pretty dependent, and I'll say that again, dependent on this path that we've gotten ourselves on. And even the apparently cooler looking stuff like the green technology, I don't know if you realize, but for example, with solar panels, having a solar panel may be you know, generating energy from that solar panel once it's installed may be cleaner than, say, burning oil, but the manufacturing process in creating those solar panels is still the same. And actually, with solar panels, it's much worse for the environment to create them than burning fossil fuel currently. It's about 20 times worse, and there are some greenhouse gases that get created and emitted from that are way worse than anything that's currently in the atmosphere now from burning oil and other things. So I don't know. This is something that I've personally struggled with for a long time. I was living in a cabin in the woods years ago, kind of like Walden-esque, I guess, just taking the long walks with this husky in like the wilderness, and I got pretty incensed with society and pretty angry about it, and I thought we were pretty much going in the wrong direction in that sense, and so I don't know. I guess it'll remain to be seen. But for me personally, I'm really into Native American culture, and I think that, you know, there's a lot of misconception in terms of how tough it is to live that way. I think there's a lot that really resonates with our biology and the way we evolved to live in a group setting like that and the way that they did, and it was a lot easier than I think people realize.
Nah. You know, it's interesting because one of my really amazing friends right now is creating, like, he has these ideas for creating these self-sustainable houses that the water comes out, like, it's amazing. And I feel like it actually, like, why does it have to be one or the other, all or nothing? Why do we have to just live out in the woods and do nothing when there's all this technology? Like, I see them, like, my vision for the future and, like, this burning desire in my heart that might seem crazy actually is them coming together so beautifully. Why does it have to be all or nothing, one or the other? Why can't it be something completely new that we've never even seen before? You know? Like, what if there's a new way?
I agree with that. I think that ultimately man's technology might even become obsolete because the mind will create what we need without this big cost. And I think the world definitely needs your kind of opinions, Asia, because they're very conscious-minded.
Yes.
But don't limit yourself to think that we have to go backwards, or that there can't be a scenario where there can be harmony without much cost. I absolutely believe abundance can come without a cost ultimately when we find that frequency.
Well, I guess the thing that incenses me about it is, like, the thing that resonates the strongest with me about what I would like to do with my life, and I kind of alluded to this in my first introduction method, was that personally, like, there's a part of me that wishes I was alive like 20,000 years ago, and I could just be fucking like this primal guy hunting and gathering and living out in the woods. And So like the closest thing to that in recorded history is like Native American culture for this country, and just the fact that those peoples that lived here before our ancestors, and I've got ancestors that have lived in the area that I'm living in right now for like 8 generations since the time people first came over. So I'm not innocent to it as well, but all of those peoples were basically exterminated. It was a mass genocide, and so I think that's really unfair. And I think you know, if you label it as conscious, then there's a lot more that could be done in terms of being conscious about how we're living and what the repercussions of the direction we've been going in and are going in really are, and how that has been created, what the foundation, or you could say like the skeletons it's built on, are. But again, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, and I'm sure I could be labeled as a cynic for this, and it could be pretty depressing, and I think it is in part.
There's got to be a reason,
in my opinion.
Go do it, live it, write about it, let us hear about it.
Oh, I want to. I'm actually.
Be
I want to, man. I'm actually planning on taking off here pretty soon and just hitchhiking around. And among visiting some different people, I wanted to go around and visit some different Native American tribes and see if there was still any skills that they were able to practice. But you know, they're not really able to live the way that they used to, because they've all been confined to these unnatural situations. Yep. But anyway, you guys should continue what you were talking about. That's all.
No, Asia, I think it's so beautiful, because what I see, there's a reason why that's a burning desire in your heart. Like, there's a reason why that hits you so close to home, because you have a message that is so uniquely yours, that I feel like you could really impact the world, you know, with your message. And, you know, I feel like you should, I love it. I can hear the burning
we need
desire.
you, Asia.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, because I think my burning desire is kind of like fighting everybody else's who likes this shit.
Yeah, then maybe shift that and see where is it.
Just stop manifesting the fight.
Did Lauren just freeze for you guys?
I think she just did. You see where it froze on? That's pretty awesome. So I've kind of been silent while listening, and I'm going to give a very, very practical, pragmatic view on what I think this is about. So in all of history, there's people that are always fighting for resources. Okay, whether and I fully believe in, you know, the abundance mentality, right? But I think that in all of recorded history, there's only been, I think, like 6 years where man has not been at war with each other in some way or another. And so some have argued that it's in our DNA. It's part of our constitution of who we are. Now, you may agree with that, you may not, but history is filled with thousands of wars that have happened. So there's always a conflict that's, you know, and battle for resources. Now, with that being said, I don't think that we can make the world better without having the power to do so. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's take an example. How can I affect change in this world if I am broke, right? So if I make a lot of money, that gives me the power to be able to help people. There's a saying that says, you know, how can you help the poor? Well, by not being one of them. And then the second reason is, you know, to get as rich as you possibly can so that you can, you know, increase the quality of life and increase and philosophize about how, you know, you think the world should be. Marcus Aurelius, right, went and conquered a whole bunch of different nations, and I think he almost conquered, you know, almost like the known world, not as much as Alexander the Great. But then Marcus Aurelius wrote a whole bunch of really good books about philosophy and ways to live life, and I think, you know, Asia, that, you know, I don't think that I understand clearly why it is, you know, that you want to do what you do, but I can, you know, empathize with not wanting to destroy and keep destroying things in this, you know, for the sake of innovation. But I don't think that we're going to get there anytime soon. But the good news is that we have people like you that want to go in that direction and will, you know, empower and maybe, you know, create a huge following, you know, to where it ends up, you know, becoming a reality. And you end up establishing like an Amish type thing where you're living in the woods somewhere, like, you know, old school Native Americans.
How do you feel about that, Asia?
Well, that was kind of the reason I was working so hard, and what I talked about in my video was I wanted to create enough wealth in lieu of like convincing mass amounts of people to abandon like civilization and technology, which I thought was pretty unrealistic. But in lieu of that, creating enough wealth to buy, you know, enough land, which would be probably a pretty substantial amount of land, that you know, basically a tribe of people could live on off of in a hunter-gatherer method. But that takes a lot of land. I don't even really know how much.
Now, how do you get land?
Well, in this day and age, with this system and way of setup, you have to have the money to buy it.
Yeah.
But that's based on the English method of like believing that man can own land. So that's pretty opposite of what the Native Americans believe.
That's true. The only issue is that I think that that is the prevailing theory of the world right now, is that land is owned, and it goes back to that scarcity, you know, scarce resources, people fighting over resources, people fighting over land. It's happening right now in the Middle East. It may probably be happening for another 500 years. I don't know. But
have you ever seen the movie
theme.
The Village?
Yeah, I have.
Yes, I have.
That's kind of like what you're talking about, huh?
No. No way, dude. That's fucking crazy. That's like some quasi-religious shit.
Well, they weren't religious. They just had ideas they wanted to leave civilization.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, I'm not talking about Amish. I don't even want that. That's still like the idea of staying in one place. I'm talking about like, you know, nomadic lifestyle, hunter-gatherer.
Huh.
Yeah.
Nomadic.
I think you have something to teach us.
I don't know. Anyway, you guys should get back to talking about that. I don't want to sidetrack the conversation.
Well, but it does kind of roll into something that I wanted to talk about in the second chapter when he talks about creating spiritually, and he talks about definiteness, and he mentions some things. And Asia, the reason I say it rolls into because he talks about describing specifically the things that you wanted, and I wrote a little bit about it in my post that when you describe specifics, and he mentioned some things, like if you're talking about money, how much money do you want? How soon do you want to make it? What cost are you willing to give up to make that money? And then sit and imagine having it, and those feelings will help you to shift your perspective or your subconscious program into allowing it to occur. And I really believe that when we get real specific with our dreams, that gives the vision power. But we have to be careful not to become attached to specific results because we have to allow the universe to manifest it the way we want. And I love how he says, sit with the vision and imagine how it feels to have that thing, because those feelings can be matched specifically. The specifics of the vision can't be, but the feelings can be. And so in a way, you're getting very specific, very finite to give yourself power, but you're not attached to those finite results. I used to have people that would say, I want to make $10,000 a month, because I would ask them. And I said, well, if you made $9,500 in a month, would you be okay with that? And they'd be like, well, yeah. And the whole idea that if they can get into this feeling of it would be great to make something like $10,000, if they really can allow the specifics to and the feelings, imagining having it, to give them power, then that is a higher frequency, and they might actually make 12,000 in the month, because the universe doesn't speak English. The universe speaks energy. So when we use English to make specifics, it helps our energy become more powerful. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, to add on to that, I would highly recommend adding to your lexicon, to your vocabulary, as many positive emotions as you can.
Yeah.
Because the only
higher
way,
frequency.
right, our perception is reality. Well, if we don't have a wide array of being able to express our positive emotions and keep us in a higher level of consciousness, then we're going to have some challenges. Because I bet you that you could name off 10 different negative emotions right now, but you couldn't name 10 positive emotions.
Yeah, because the natural man wants us to focus on what's going wrong so that we can prevent it, but we just keep focusing on what's wrong.
Yep, that's why I don't watch the news. That's what the news is focused on, negativity. I call CNN constant negative news. It's nope, not for me. You know,
I see what you're saying, Ben, but I don't mind watching the news because I know that it's a very limited perspective. I can keep that from taking over my mind. I mean, obviously, if our tendency is to move towards negative things and not positive things, we just have to make the decision to slowly turn it into a mind that moves towards positive things. And once you do that, then any of the negativity that comes around isn't going to necessarily have as much power because we don't give it honor.
Does
that make sense?
Yeah, I do see that. I wouldn't willingly go and put myself, you know, around negativity like that. I do agree with the, you know, it's not going to affect me, you know, if I have it in small doses. If I turn on the news and something bad's happened, that it's immediately going to, you know, brainwash me, and now I'm super negative. But I wouldn't go there willingly. You know what I mean? I
see what you're saying.
Yeah. So, but one other thing that I wanted to point out, that, and I actually have a couple, is he talks about there's a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready for it, because you can't receive what you aren't ready for. Now, what does that mean? That means that if you, okay, so first off, let's establish what wishing is. Wishing implies that you're not going to get it, right? It's almost the same as wanting. Wanting implies not havingness. So when you want something, you're telling the universe, I want it. And the universe is going to give you more not havingness. Does that make sense?
I think you're talking about a true principle, but can I describe wishing? I think wishing means you hope that it's given to you, like you don't play a part in it. So in a way, it's almost victimhood, in that things are just given to me and I don't have any control. So is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Fernando Flores, and I love this quote. He says, "Hope is the raw material of losers." So I'm all for positive thinking and, you know, attracting, you know, to myself by nature of who I'm being, but I wouldn't hope for it. I would definitely. Now, the second part of what Napoleon Hill says here is being ready for it, which is an entirely different thing. Being open to receiving massive amounts of wealth, or whatever it is that you're defining. So you mentioned the $10,000. If I'm not ready to receive $10,000, it's not going to happen, right?
So what's the difference? What's the difference between being ready and not being ready?
Okay, so not being ready is someone, you know, is like, okay, I want to win $1 million, or I want to win the lottery, you know, and it's a wish. It's really what it is. They wish they would win the lottery. They wish they can get a break, okay? Yeah. And maybe they win 30 million or 50 million. But because they're not ready to have it, when it does happen, they're dumbfounded. They're like, "Oh my God, I didn't know that this would happen." And then what usually happens within 5 years is those lottery winners are dead broke.
They're actually more broke than they were before they won the lottery.
Yeah. So you have to have that state of mind. You have to be ready. And I guess being ready would be defined as having the state of mind that allows you to be the person that accepts it. Because have you ever been in a situation where somebody wants to give you something or somebody wants to reward you with something and you were like, you know what, I don't feel like I deserve this? Okay? There's many accounts of self-sabotage from people who, actors and actresses, celebrities, right? They have everything, some of them have everything that they ever want, are successful in most people's eyes, but deep down inside, they don't feel like they deserve it. And so they sabotage themselves. They turn to drugs and alcohol and just generally do a downward spiral because deep down in their bottom recesses of their amygdala, right, they have a belief that they're not worth it or they don't deserve it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they have a set of beliefs that contributes to a certain condition in their life. And when the condition changes by chance, their mind brings it back to the condition that it was. In other words, match the frequency and you cannot help but get that reality. Well, that's the same even in reverse. I mean, your life is always going to be like your frequency because like attracts like. Life is a reflection. And so when you make tons of money, you come back to the place. In other words, the most important thing you can do for your finances is shift your beliefs about finances in your world.
Right. Okay. Definitely. So I'll use that analogy. Being ready is being able to, is your frequency, I guess, up to a level where you are somebody who has permission and is entitled to having $10,000 or whatever it is,
Sure.
$1 million. So I definitely am with you on that one.
Yeah.
So he talks about making it an obsession. And I want to talk about this real quick. And I'm going to give a very, very real example here. And when you first hear it, it's a little controversial, but at the end, it's going to make sense, okay? So there was a really respected judge, right, and part of this community. And this judge ended up being convicted for child molestation of a young girl. And later, when an interviewer got to him, they asked him, how could something like this have happened? You had basically everything, that you ever wanted. You had the respect community, all this. How? And he goes, you know what? The first time that it happened, he saw a young girl, and he had a flicker of a thought. That was all that it was. And then a couple months later, he saw another young girl, and he held that thought a little longer. And then a couple months down the line, he saw another girl, and it was even longer. He held it in his mind until a month before he actually did it. It was all that he could think about. It consumed him, and then it happened. And he goes, that's how it happened. Now, if you can understand that, that's how humans work with anything that they want. It becomes that burning desire in their mind where that's all they think about. And that's what Hill's referring to, is where all your thoughts are upon the thing that you want, where you cannot think of anything but it until you actually manifest it into reality. Does that make sense?
Right, so
Yeah.
how do we decide whether, our individual burning desires are morally right or wrong?
You would decide whether it's morally right or wrong?
Well, I'm just saying because we could, by those, terms, we could manifest anything.
It's true. We could.
And so far we have, and there's a lot of different ways that people have manifested different things. But how do we, what of those different things that could be manifested are right or wrong?
I think that's very...
Is there a right and a wrong?
I would say definitely that instance with the judge, that's, I would say that's definitely morally wrong. I don't think that the universe responds to right or wrong morally. And here's why. Because money is just paper, okay? Money doesn't have a conscience. There are many crooks out there who have tons of it, who do really shady shit that have a lot of money, all right? Now, if money had a conscience, before, as the money's being drawn to them, if the money had a conscience, they'd be like, stop, no, you're a bad person. I'm not going to go to you. But that's not what happens. Money doesn't care one way or another. In the same way, I think that the manifestation of your desires is not dependent upon whether it's morally right or wrong, because it's very subjective. Your morally right or wrong is different than somebody on the other end of the world's morally right and wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think we have, we have some agreed upon ideas of what generally is right and what is more right than other things. You know what I'm saying? Like as societies go in different groups of people
so what do you
generally
think,
tend to agree and conform with each other on what certain activities are acceptable or unacceptable. What's that, John?
So I was going to ask you, how do you decide what's right and wrong? Are you saying that it's determined by a group?
Well, it certainly seems to me that it's determined by our conditioning, by the environment we grow up in, by our parents, by our genetics, a whole number of factors. I don't know if we could, it seems like maybe the people who do the craziest shit are the ones who just decide on the spot that what they're going to do is right, and they don't care what anybody thinks about it. I don't know. I'm just questioning. I'm wondering what you guys think about this.
I think any human in the moment is still suffering from a lot of limits. That's what human is. We're not perfect. So judging on what a person does in the moment is really a tough measure to decide what's right and wrong. You certainly can judge by results over time.
Well, so I guess my question, Asia, is what's your end result, I guess, by this line of questioning, as far as what's morally right and wrong? Because if all throughout history, there have been cultures that have done things that our modern day society would look down upon. All right, there's people that have sacrificed humans because they think that there's a God, and it's a sacrifice and the whole thing. Spartans used to put their young boys through rituals, right? They would encourage them to fight, and sometimes fight to the death, right? Was that morally right or wrong?
I agree with what you're saying. 1,000 people die. Is that wrong? Well, yeah, it is. Well, why? I think ultimately it can only come back to that feeling we have in our heart that, yeah, that's wrong.
So I guess what I'm saying, the point I'm trying to make is then, if there isn't, a set in stone right or wrong, like we're not born with a set of rules in our brain as to what's right and wrong. Well, maybe we are to some extent. I don't think people are naturally inclined to hurt each other. I don't know, though. What I'm trying to say, though, is that I think that idea of morality and what we agree upon as right and wrong is dependent upon the culture and the way of doing things that we grow up within. That's my point.
Okay,
so like you're saying, Ben, maybe in ancient Greece, in Sparta, it was morally right to them to, when babies were born, to look at the baby and if it was deformed in any way, throw it off a cliff and only keep the, strong children, and then make those strong children further fight each other to weed out the strongest of them. And that was acceptable and morally right for their society. I think my point is that there are equal things that maybe we don't realize in the society we've grown up that we have come to accept as right. And I don't know.
Yeah. So are you saying that some of the things that we consider morally right are not morally right to you?
Well, maybe not to me, or even just looking at the other side of the equation, who else is affected besides us? Because I think it's good to live in Rome, but there's lots of people that Rome was built upon.
Okay, so
how do you know any of that is even right and wrong, though? Maybe
Right.
Maybe it's not wrong to build a city on top of people. I don't know.
I don't know.
I think ultimately it just comes down to your connection to divinity. That's what some people call it. It's your feelings. I mean, Abraham Hicks talks about how our feelings, our emotions, reveal to us whether something resonates with the core of who we are. And who we are is a tough thing to describe, but I would say that we are, an entity of intelligence that comes from something else. I mean, you're getting into some pretty basic stuff here. I think culture can build beliefs that will overcome that little voice in our head or that conscience, and I think even babies are born with it. It's a certain light. I'm certain that culture can overcome that, but I don't think culture gives us our full program. We see too many deviants. We see too many rebels that say, wait a minute, I got to question this, and they change even though they were raised with it. So there's something other than culture, but culture does throw a lot of weight. Does that make sense, Asia?
Yeah, no, I like what you're saying. I guess I would ask you then, so how do you believe that we come to desire what we do, or how we come to, like, why is it that we want to create or have a burning desire for particular things? Where do you think that inspiration comes from personally, John?
My personal beliefs are that it comes from our divinity inside us. I believe we're children of God, and that comes with a certain level or a certain sense. I mean, a lot of people call it the light of Christ. I think there's something to that. There's some kind of core characteristics that build that want to improve, the want to grow, the want to be loved. Those things come from something. It's hard to explain, but I believe there's something very solid to it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's just human nature to want to be part of, a group and to be accepted and to, love and share love and be loved. I think that's just part of our, our evolution. So you think that you believe that basically you're a conduit for God, and so God hands down or hands through you, your different motivations and whatnot. Is that
not exactly? No, not exactly. I believe I can become a conduit to God, but that's something different. I think naturally I'm born with certain tendencies, and everyone is. We want those things, and they can get skewed very, very drastically in this life if the conditions are right. But I think we're all born with a certain desire for those things. And even that initial desire means nothing until we develop it. I mean, not nothing, but it means very little until we grow into it and we allow it to become something that matters.
Yeah, to riff on your, that we're all born with certain, predisposed wants. Tony Robbins talks about how we have 6 different, what he calls, I guess, needs. And I think I have it written in my journal here. But,
are you talking about like the hierarchy of needs, like that pyramid thing?
It's something like that, but it's not. It's different. Tony's got a different spin on it. But he talks about how some of the things that we need are certainty, uncertainty, both of them, right? Can't have too much certainty, so you need a little uncertainty, otherwise you get bored. You need some certainty, so you have some type of security or comfort. Recognition is another one. Significance is one. And then I think those are the needs of the physical, is what he talks about, those 4. And then the last 2, he goes the needs of the spirit. And if I remember right, it's growth and contribution, right? So if you don't do something to, I guess, deposit into your growth and into your contribution needs jar, then you feel very depressed. You feel, but that's Tony's spin on it. So what makes something morally right or wrong, what makes somebody do something, whether they think it's morally right or wrong, or whether they break out of the mold of the culture, that they're in. I think it's motivated by one of those 6 needs.
I agree, and I like how you said you can check how you feel. And that's what Abraham Hicks says. If you're really in tune with your own feelings, they're an indicator. They're a measuring stick to decide if you're aligning with who you really are. I think it all comes back to that little spark, whatever that is. And it's called a lot of different names in a lot of different cultures, but it does exist, I believe. And like I said, in my culture, in the world I live in, I call it the light of Christ, and I call us children of God. Through that, it makes sense to me. But there is some sort of spark.
What do you think, Asia?
I'm just making space for both you guys to be who you are. That's all. I'm not trying to, destroy any concepts here.
Well, it's not. I mean, this is just an open dialogue. There's no
So
right
what
or
are
wrong
your
here.
What are your concepts, Asia?
I agree with both of you guys. I agree with a lot of people. I think on some level I agree with all people. I think I think my concepts are pretty spiritual. They're not too dogmatic. They're not any particular religion based. I believe that this whole experience, all of experiential reality or apparent reality, is consciousness, and by that I mean that there appears to be apparent individuals here, right? Like me, like this body and this brain, and then Ben and you, John, and we all claim ownership of that particular individuality, but in essence, in reality, it's the same individual operating through all of these apparent bodies, whether those are humans or animals. Well, humans are animals, or nature and the natural world. I think that really aligns with a lot of different religions at their core in terms of, all of this being God and God operating through all of it. But at the same time, I also recognize that for me at least, for my ego, that this is all an illusion, that anything that can be experienced in experiential apparent reality, whether it's what can be experienced with the senses or the thoughts that arise spontaneously in any apparent body's mind, or the feelings that are associated with those thoughts in the hearts of those bodies, or even the objective watching that can be achieved of a particular body's experience impersonally, that's all part of a greater illusion that is very real looking, but in essence is just this one big giant dream that consciousness is dreaming. And
so, Asia, if you're saying it's an illusion, do you feel like there's a journey? I mean, is there an end game?
I think there's an apparent journey if you believe in the concept of time, but I think ultimately, for me at least, there isn't any time. The only time is right now, and I know that is a catechism that's thrown around a lot as like a New Age line, and it sounds good, but if you really consider that on a deep level, that right now is the only moment, it's pretty crazy. I mean, if you just imagine it as this energy like you're talking about that just shape shifts constantly, right? And things appear to move between, space and time appears to progress, but what if that wasn't actually the case? What if it was all just this massive energy which was inseparable from each other, but the human mind appears as separate?
Okay, but in that context, I know that I'm a different person than I used to be, and that may be an illusion too, because I'm drawing the conclusions from the memories I had of who I used to be, and so I mean, maybe basic rationality is an illusion, but rationality tells me that was a journey. And so it also tells me that there must be an end game, or there must be something I'm moving towards. You don't believe that? You think it might just be a flash?
I think on a personal level, yeah, I do believe that. But I think that the apparent like that apparent individuality is not the case. So I think for somebody, a human being, that's true. They are on a journey through time and space, and they grow and learn, or don't, or whatever happens to them happens. But I also recognize from time to time that is also kind of like a mistaken identity for me, at least. It's what I call the illusion. And again, I don't want to sidetrack you guys too much, but this is what I believe.
Well, that's okay, because the reason I'm asking this is because if you don't believe that there's a journey, that there's steps to something else, and it's just a flash, and it doesn't ever end up really meaning anything, then right and wrong wouldn't matter to you, right?
Well, no, because there's still this body and personality called Aisha that has conditioning, and was raised in a certain manner within a certain culture, and so there are definitely things that I believe are right and wrong, and things that I'm probably predispositioned to do or not do, and that can change. If I work on my thinking, my thinking patterns and thought patterns and habituation, and take an active role in creating new conditioning. I think that is a journey, and if I look at it through thoughts, then I have been on one, and I still continue to be on one. But again, for me at least, that is still all part of this, this greater thing that is kind of illusory in nature for me anyway.
That's kind of what I'm talking about. I mean, if you think it's important to do anything right, if what's right matters at all, then you must believe that matters, or that, I mean, and the fact that it matters isn't an illusion to you. It's real, right?
Right. I mean, we're getting into some pretty heavy shit here in terms of what I believe, and I don't want to disturb you guys too much, so maybe we should just call it for another time.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess the only thing that I really, I guess, have to say is that mentality, how does that relate to desire for you? Can you explain that in 30 seconds or less?
So what is the mentality that you're...
Well, I mean, your point of view, I mean...
Okay.
Like,
well, I mean, Aisha has a point of view, but Aisha's not who I am. So Aisha, I have, different wants and desires, and at different times I've had burning ones, and that's why I'm participating in this group, because I want to try and learn more about how to manifest, what the different things I've had burning desires are for. And also, I really appreciate the value of having other people who are thinking on this same tangent, and working towards a common end, because I think we end up creating something greater. We kind of create this group mind,
right.
A mastermind that is greater than any one of us could achieve on our own. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. So the end goal, right? I mean, there is something to be said for getting in a mastermind and talking and using, the supermind, if you will, the combined minds of everyone. So I guess what my question would be, and I know you talked about how you want to be able to raise money to go and explore Native American, the whole thing. I wish I understood that better, but for
Yeah,
me,
I'm right there with you.
oh, okay, all right. So I get what you're saying there. Albert Einstein, he says, I mean, I'm not knocking you or anything, but
Right.
because I've been guilty of this too. But if you can't explain something, simply, to a 5-year-old, that you don't know it, well enough, and that's me too. Definitely been times in my life where I just didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but to bring this back to a very pragmatic, kind of question is I'm on this mastermind so that I can, be exposed to other people's thoughts and people who are prosperity minded and who want to be able to generate money, right, or attract money, or whichever way that is, and be able to, the end result is put more dollars in my bank account. That's my end result from this. Now, it may not be directly from this mastermind, but it could be indirectly from it. But that's ultimately my end goal. So I guess my question for you guys is, do you guys have something similar to that? I mean, because I want to bring this back to desire, and desire for what? And maybe it's not even money. Maybe it's for an ideal that you have, like Asia. Or maybe it's towards, spiritual creation and getting more people aware of the law of attraction. John?
So I have something to say on that. And Asia, I hope you don't feel bad. I wasn't trying to call you out. I just like conversation like that. So I apologize if that went too far. I know we got on a tangent.
I feel fine, guys. Thanks for your concern, though.
Well, and I love mastermind groups too, and the reason is because it's coaching. And obviously, when we look through our subconscious program at the world, that's our perspective. And if we can only see the world one way, then we're going to consistently be creating a certain kind of life. So the mastermind groups are an advantage because it's other people that don't see the world through our subconscious program, and they can help us to gain some objectivity. And that's what I really like. So, Ben, when you talk about I want more money in my bank account, on some level, this is an exercise that I was given before. How much money do you want? Build that vision, and then basically put it down. And then my coach had me do this. Take a piece of paper, write column A on one side, and write column B on the other side of the paper. On column A, write what you want. And in column B, write why you can't have that. And column B will reveal your limiting beliefs. Because anything is possible. I can't have $10,000 because it's just too hard to whatever. Well, maybe that's not true. You can find a way around that. And so when you start to question the excuses you give yourself, then you're actually examining your beliefs. And so in the context of this thing, I love how it matters so much to get into the right mindset. One of the things that he mentioned in that book that I really liked was he talked about how dreamers change the world.
Yes.
And I immediately thought, I don't feel like I need to change the whole world. I can change things just in my market, or just in my city. Now, Rexburg, Idaho doesn't even have 20,000 people when the college students aren't here. But I can see a very big need for people to start to gain the principles of success and the principles of faith in this area, and I think it would really catch on. And so I'm starting to dream about the sort of people that will be drawn out of this city to me, that I can start a community of people that believe in each other and believe in themselves, and I think it's going to be profound just right here. Because of changing perspective. I really love that. So Ben, to answer your question in a way, to make more money, obviously to shift the condition of your life, we need to shift the kind of ways that we see life, and then life will shift. So that's what I'm looking for in this group. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the different perspective and being able to be exposed to those, definitely. I'm right on board with that.
I get my own way a lot. I know I do. So anyway.
All right, so I think that we should wrap this up because we've been on for I think 2.5 hours now. And you know what? This is great. I love it. I
I do
love
too.
being a part of this. I love the people that have come on, Andrea, Lauren, and then anybody else who's going to be watching this replay, which I don't know if they're going to watch the whole 3 hours, but you know what I mean. But you know what? It's there if they want to, and if they want to hear us, rambling on about paradigms and Native Americans.
Yeah, we do ramble. That's for sure.
Yeah, but you know what? But it's good though, because if it was too structured, I don't think that there would be any creativity and there would be any insights and there wouldn't be the supermind that we're creating. So
Agreed.
This is actually my first mastermind that I've actually been a part of, and I want to thank Lauren for posting about it in the first place and making it a possibility. But I want to thank each and every one of you for coming together to actually make this reality, taking that action step. Because Lord knows I've had it in my mind, I should start a mastermind, but I didn't fucking do it. So that action I really respect. Thank you guys.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys too. Appreciate your opinions and perspectives. I like how it challenges me.
All right. Well, if nobody's got anything else, do you have something to say, Asia?
Yeah, you guys were just talking about why you were here, and I think for all of us, on some level, it's about money. But I just wanted to reiterate what the book itself says about that. And in the beginning of the book, it asks, "What do you want most?" And it doesn't limit the scope of the book to just manifesting money. I mean, some of the examples it gives beside money are fame, power, contentment, personality, peace of mind, and happiness. And so I think the book makes a point of making the point that this book isn't just useful in terms of creating money, but creating whatever you want for yourself in life with these concepts. And so, being here as well to create some sort of money, because I don't want to be, destitute. I think like any of us is part of the reason why I'm here, but it's not the only reason. And I think I'm still figuring out those other reasons, but I really resonate and agree with what you were saying, Ben, in terms of the step that Lauren took, because I'm in the same exact boat for the way that you expressed that. So I think it's awesome what Lauren did, and she's in a really cool spot right now too. I mean, did you guys? I don't know if you're friends with her on Facebook, but did you hear that she just was randomly walking down the street one day and she walked into this place where they're holding auditions for a play. And just for shits and giggles, she tried out for the play and she got the lead role.
Yeah, I actually saw that. Yeah,
that's awesome. I can resonate with that. That actually happened to me last summer. Almost the exact same thing, just out of the blue. But I didn't get the lead. But I got the funniest part in a big community play. It was awesome. What I hear you saying, Asia, is you want to become a more powerful creator. That's me too. I love that.
Yeah.
So I definitely appreciate you guys as well, and I definitely value your opinions and your perspective and your paradigms, the way that you view the world, and I hope I haven't seemed too cynical or negative here today.
No, and I want to just kind of put this out there that this is an open forum, for you to be able to say whatever it is that you want to say. I've noticed probably, enough times for it to be a pattern. You were apologizing for even bringing up your point of view, and you didn't want to offend anybody. That's not the case here. That's not this reality. This reality inside this mastermind is that this is a place of cool, calm energy where we focus that to get what we want.
Yeah,
and there's
no spirit of condemnation in this at all. In fact, I want to explore your opinions, Asia. I mean, it's not a matter of condemnation at all. The truth is the truth, and it doesn't matter who believes it or not. It still remains the truth. And so much we're on our own journeys, so condemnation is not worth anything.
All right. Well, thank you guys for giving me permission to be more of who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. All right, guys. Rock on. I will talk to you later.
All right.
See
Later,
you guys
guys.
on Monday.
Take
All right.
care.
Bye.
Have a good week.